Okay, so these first set of videos we're gonna watch, they're paused at two separate occasions. One is when our foot first makes contact on the ground, and the second is when the front foot fully gets connected into the ground. Ultimately, we're looking to be able to get that foot to get into the ground nice and flush and flat as quickly as possible. Um, so we're going to see some of us heel into the foot and it's relatively smooth, like we just saw there. We're going to see some other guys, like we saw in Colin in the first one there, how it's kind of on the side of the foot before it rolls into the full foot. An example would be kind of here, landing on the inside of the foot, and then the full foot makes connection with the ground. We can see even there how that front foot loses connection with the ground while we're going through our rotation. We want to try to get that front foot into the ground nice and firm, nice and strong, as flush as we can right away. So that way our lower half has good firm connection with the ground, because we can't start throwing the baseball until we get good firm connection with the ground. What we're also going to be able to notice in these sets of clips here, and noticing how our front foot's landing and then how it's getting into the full connection, is where is my upper body positioned at that point in time. When we get into our foot strike position, which is ultimately here, but for us in our examples would be here when that front foot gets all the way into the ground, we want to make sure that our upper body is still quote unquote to the side or in its original position like we see here. That's what we would call upper lower half separation, or the lower half rotating forward while the upper half has not rotated yet. Another term for upper lower half separation is hip shoulder separation. The more we have of hip shoulder separation, the more power we're going to be able to produce. The more hip shoulder separation we create, the more the body is making the throw and the less stress is being put on the arm to make the throw. So when we are looking at our front foot here, we want to really make sure that we start to see, what do I need to do to anticipate the slope of the mound so that my foot can more match that slope so it can land a little bit more flush. Also, when we go back and look at these here, another thing we want to look at in the lower body is how much this front leg gets rotated, and we can see at Colin's true foot strike position, the leg is kind of slightly angled over here. Oops. What we got here? Oh, I can't do that in full screen, eh? Okay, so we'll go to here. We can see how this leg is kind of going in this direction, and the shin's kind of going in this direction. So we got this angle over here. But Colin won't be able to get the ball out of his glove or out of his hand until this front leg gets more here. And now we're in our firm front side, of which we can rotate around. However, we can see, unfortunately, we've already rotated around before this front side got firm, which is just minimizing our power and also minimizing our command. Let's see, excuse me, heel hits first, but then very quickly we get that full foot to get into the ground with that lower half rotated to the target, while the upper half is trying its best to stay back. You can see the front shoulder is starting to open up, mostly because the elbow has gotten outside of the shoulder, which now forces the shoulder out. But all in all, we have created pretty good hip shoulder separation. Now we just got to make sure that as we go to throw, that this out here that's gone this way, we know an object in motion will stay in motion unless an outside force stops it. So we need this elbow to swivel in to prevent this shoulder from continuing to fly open. And what we'll see as we go to throw here, that it does a pretty good job of going in, and now we're on a firm front side there with the upper body, which allows we take that back a little bit, which allows the backside shoulder to rotate out in front, out in front, out in front, out in front real well. The one thing we do see is how the body kind of falls forward, which just goes into some timing issues that we have, meaning we could be getting some of this energy that's still in our body going this way, that linear energy. Linear meaning going to our target. Rotational energy meaning how we rotate our hips and how we rotate our shoulders. We have linear energy left over here. And when we really produce linear energy is here, is this drive into our foot strike. And then from there, it's all rotational energy. So if after the rotation of the throw has concluded and we still have some linear energy left, that means we could have used that linear energy to power our rotational energy. So that means we got some more power still locked up in here that we just got to learn how to get out with just a little bit of different timing and a little bit different thought processes. But all in all, pretty good delivery. We can see that foot starting to try to get into that, matching the plane of the slope of the rubber, or slope of the mound rather, excuse me. And it's just slightly missing, as we can see on the inside of that foot, before it then rolls over to get that full connection. And as that rollover happens, as that rollover is occurring, we can see that's really when that backside foot is turning over, turning over, turning over, turning over. It's also when that front knee is really turning over, turning over, turning over, turning over. But unfortunately, by the time this gets to where it needs to be and gets this closer where it needs to be, which has gotten that closer where it needs to be, we can see that the upper body has begun its rotation, which now minimizes our upper and lower half separation, meaning our hips are in a more similar angle as our shoulders are, as opposed to when that foot first makes connection with the ground, our upper body is in a great position for foot strike. And that's just the importance of making sure we get more and more comfortable with the slope of this mound, and we understand that we got to get this knee to rotate out and not just get the foot out over here. We need to rotate the front knee. We need to rotate the front foot. We need to rotate the front hip. Right now, we're relying on kind of just more of a swoop of the front leg, which is not an issue. There's tons of benefits that come from that type of swooping motion with that front leg. We just got to make sure that this knee doesn't lag behind the foot. We got to make sure the knee from right here just violently pops open, violently open that knee, so that way it can catch up with the foot. So that way, when we land more flush with the foot and the knee is more rotated as well, we can be more of this position with that front leg while the upper body is in this position here. So more power is waiting to be unlocked. Same thing, we can see laying on the inside of that foot with that knee going too far in, meaning it hasn't rotated through yet. We can also see on the back foot, we haven't gotten any rotation yet out of that backside, and we can also see further that point because our hips have not rotated, even though our upper body is where it needs to be, or relatively close to where it needs to be. The lower body has not done anything. So now with no upper lower half separation, that means the lower body can't feed the upper body. So the upper body is going to have to do all the work on its own, meaning we're going to add extra stress to that arm with each throw, and our ability to be consistent and repeatable is going to be harder to achieve. Also, we can see, again, why we need to have good footwear as we're sliding in and out of this slipper here. However, all the things that are good with this upper body position at foot strike is what can overcome all of the downfalls of what the lower body has found you or has gotten you to at this position. Because again, that glove is right in front of your body. We're riding up against this wall here, and we stay inside that wall as we release through real well. It's just, we just need to find a way to work on getting this lower body to fire on time, and that way we can get it to turn over and have that belt buckle towards that target, have this front knee rotated more, so that way as we come through rotation with the upper body, the lower half already has us in a good position. But we got good arm strength, good arm speed. That's overcoming a lot of that. So once we square away that lower half, there should be a lot more that comes with it. So another guy that's landing on the inside of that foot, we can see where that knee is at and how that's over here in this direction, meaning we're leaving the knee behind. However, the backside does a real good job of driving out, creating energy and power. That's going to be something that will be a lot easier to see and point out from the side view. Glove is doing a good job trying to stay in front of that body. Elbow is getting out a little bit, but that's right at the point where it needs to then just kind of come on in to here, and we will be a-okay with that. If this upper part of your leg here and your knee specifically was able to rotate, we would be able to be more here with that front side leg, and that would have our lower half's ability to rotate much, much more, which would create that upper lower half separation, which creates that increased power and decreased stress on the arm. So we'll be able to see then, once this foot gets fully connected into the ground, how then the foot just kind of keeps on having a difficult time finding connectivity. So it's the inside, and then we get the full foot, but it's kind of the more in the toes, and that kind of scoots it forward. And we have a difficult time throwing over a firm front side because of how much extra movement it's doing there and kind of sliding around and skating here, that we don't have anything firm to throw around and ultimately then through. Thinking about when you hit, if that front leg starts buckling and bending while we're swinging, we're not going to create any power. We need to be swinging over that firm front leg. Same thing applies when we throw. We want to be throwing over a firm front leg. However, getting to stand behind you, watching you throw, we got real good arm side run on our fastball. So the ball's coming out of your hand real well. We just need to clean up some of that stuff with the lower half to help unlock even more spin and ultimately power. Excuse me. So one thing we want to think about here is we kind of just notice that the hand is just always in front of the body. The hand's always in front of the body until it gets loaded up. We want to think about, we need to load that thing up. If we were going to get in a fist fight, we wouldn't want to just load our elbows to in front of our body. We'd want to load those elbows back here, so that way we could punch, boom, way out here, not just load it to here and try to punch there. Same thing, kind of thing like when you hit, like that back elbow kind of loads up. We kind of load and pinch that scap back there, that back shoulder blade. So we will need to do some work and some synchronization and flow with our hand separation. So that's the first thing for you to remember is hand separation flow. Moving on to the lower half, like we've been talking with everyone else, we can see how your first connection with the ground is very much toe heavy and inside part of the foot. We can also see, like a lot of your teammates, that front knee not rotating out, creating this hard angle in our front leg, which really blocks our belt buckle from getting to the target, aka the back hip can't rotate around when it's being blocked by this knee here. We can also see that the glove is pretty far outside of your body, which means it's going to start wanting to take this shoulder with it, which is going to then start to open you up this way, which will send then the arm this way more, which we can kind of really see the full effect of that when we get to release, just how much these shoulders are angled here at release. And on top of that, how you're kind of like a lot of your body's weight and mass is on the outside of your body, which is just going to kind of raise the difficulty of being able to be repeatable and kind of throw strikes. But not saying that it can't happen, right? I mean, we just got to find some ways to get this lower half to get in a better position for you, which may clean up some of the things that this upper half is doing in order to throw the baseball, because again, if the lower half doesn't rotate by the time we get the foot strike, the upper half is going to have to start pulling and rotating and dragging the backside lower half, so this back leg, with it. As the upper body rotates, it'll be pulling and dragging the back side with it, which will slow down how fast the upper body can rotate, which will then minimize power and minimize command. So we got to think about kind of glove, so that hand separation leading into glove finish, and then rotating that lower half. So one thing that we talked about is just kind of how long it took for your delivery to get going. We just kind of have a very kind of like Justin Verlander-esque leg lift here, which is no issue if like there's no one on base, or like we got runners on second and third, or just third, and you don't have any worry of a stolen base threat. But anytime we're going to need to be relatively quick to the plate, this is going to be a little bit tough to get going quick. It's such a karate kick in, kick out kind of thing. And what we can also notice as well is that if you just watch your back heel here, and how we lose connectivity with the ground even because of this leg lift. And it's not really because of the leg lift, it's more because this back knee here is, we'll see it's kind of going this way, how it's doing that. And that's just going to peel the heel up off the ground then. But the only reason the knee is going this way is because the foot's being kicked way out here. It's just its way to stay balanced. So something to think about, if we're getting up on that heel, we're losing that good connection with the ground. We get it again, but how repeatable is that going to be each and every time to get that down, down, down in that same alignment as well? So that's the first thing to kind of notice. We can see here probably the best on the squad of matching slope with foot or ankle angle with the foot angle. I guess you could say ankle flexion or foot angle. Just ever so slightly on the inside of the foot before we'll see the whole foot get in there, but that's obviously in slow motion. So to the naked eye, it's probably all good and gravy. We can also see how that back foot is nice and fully turned over, which then gets that belt buckle exposed, aka that back hip has been able to rotate through. We can see that that chest is fighting to stay back and not rotate here. We got the glove in front of the body, so that's a good position. We can see we got this kind of tilt or arch here with our back, which really is a sign of how much the lower half is rotating and how much the upper body is trying to fight to stay back here. So real good with the upper lower half separation. So top tier facial moments there. But yeah, everything coming through looks good. Back side's able to rotate through. Be nice if we could find a way to keep that ball in your hand just a little longer. And I know in our pen, if I remember correctly, the general theme is if we were missing up. So what we kind of want to be thinking about, and probably what we'll want to be focusing on for you, bud, is learning how to get this from here and not just going out this way to the target, but going out this way to the target. So that way, once we get to that release, it's like a yank this. I don't want to say yank, that's a hard word to use to not get misinterpreted. But like thinking about, like, I always like to think like if you were skydiving and your main parachute didn't deploy and you started to panic and that reserve chute, you got to reach way up where like your arm is right now, and you had to just yank it down to your opposite. You had to yank from way up here, and you had to pull this lever all the way down into like this pocket over here. You're gonna pull it like your life dependent on it because you're just free falling. And right now we can kind of see like we get that path is what we got. We just need to learn how to get it to be applied so that we're not just releasing here, but we're releasing like right here. There's a difference between the power we can produce coming out here and how we could get out to like here. And your delivery, your upper lower half separation is there. It's just kind of understanding how you can slightly alter this right here, this finish right here. And we kind of see how it just wants to kind of kick out this way as if someone's like literally kicking your hips, boom, as you're trying to finish around this way. So let me clean that up. As this upper body is trying to accelerate this way, there's this weird force of the lower body going and getting kicked out this way. And those are pretty opposite forces, and those are going to start to cancel out each other. Which, even though the ball is out of our hand, we can kind of notice when is that butt going that way. It's right during release. So like we're talking about milliseconds here, and that's just what everything we're fighting for. We can also see front foot has some linear energy still in it. Some linear energy still in it. And like we said, if you have linear energy still in your body after release, we could have used that linear energy for our rotation and our throw, aka there's more power still in there. We just got to find that timing and that strong front side stability to get it. And we will watch the same video clips here one more time, but side by side with some teammates so you can compare and contrast some things. And if we watch our side view videos, we're going to be pausing them just one time from the side, and that's when we've gotten fully into our foot strike. And what we'll notice from here is kind of how much or how little we're able to see our hips rotate or not. And for those of us that know that we were landing on the inside part of our foot or had that knee angle issue, that's going to be a reason why our hips can't rotate as much as they possibly could, versus someone that had that knee more rotated with the foot being rotated and the front hip being rotated, which helps that back hip come through. We kind of are able to see the result of what that looks like on that back foot. And what we said over here, bud, was that front leg from that front view was kind of not as rotated with that knee as it needed to be. However, we said we could see that that back foot was really well rotated, and we can see that here, just how well we are able to get that back foot, back knee, back hip turned around. So once we're able to get that front knee to rotate as well, we're going to be able to create more power with that lower half. But we can also see from this position too how much that upper body has already begun to rotate through, versus a guy like Colin, who's able to keep that upper body back a lot better for a lot longer. But unfortunately, we can see that for Colin, his back knees rotated pretty well, but the back hip and back foot specifically hasn't turned over a whole lot, versus how much this back foot or this back foot has turned over. So if Colin was wearing Nikes like here, we wouldn't be able to see his swoosh like we see here, because it would be facing like shortstop. We let that continue through, and what we can see is that something we've been working on with Colin is a firm front side leg to rotate through and around, versus this being in that good position here, but we need it to lock out and get firm, turn into a flagpole, so that way our flag can violently whip through. But our flag is not going to be able to whip through cleanly if our flagpole is unstable. So we're going to see this front leg kind of unstable, and we're not able to rotate around and through like we could. What we see also with our lefty over here is that the lower half kind of just gives out. It kind of just sinks during rotation. Kind of just sinks. You're another guy that we're going to want to work on firming up this front side leg here, so that way all of this energy that we're creating with this good drive and rotation that you have, this good lower body drive and rotation from that back side leg, all that energy and power that you sent this way, we need to apply it to the throw this way. And the only way we can change that slight differences in angles is if this front leg locks out for us, which turns this energy, let me just clear that out. It turns this energy that you just created by going that way. Now we got to stop it from continuing to go that way, so that way it can get sent up the chain. So I can get sent up the chain and ultimately then back out this way. And it requires that front knee to kind of get strong and stable in order for 1 to go to 2 to go to 3. We need this to kick in. So same thing, it's going to pause once and only once, and that is when we get in a foot strike. So we can see, we said a good upper lower half separation was here, and we can see that that back foot's turned over, that knee's turned over, that back hip's trying to get through, that front side's in a good position there. Another well turned over back foot, which gets that back knee to rotate through well, which brings that back hip forward. Again, another guy who is landing pretty good with that front foot, which creates that entire lower body in a good strong position. But then we can see angle and angle. Let me continue that there. Versus angle and angle. We can also see that this foot's not turned over as much. This foot has really not done hardly anything at this point. But if we're looking at upper bodies, this upper body, oops, that's not a good mark. This upper body is really good at foot strike. Good at foot strike. Little opened. We can see that we're slightly opening up, but overall, pretty good upper body at foot strike. We can see kind of this weird angle that we have here with this when these guys are more here, here, here. But that again, we talked about how little the lower body was rotating, so the upper body is having to do some extra things to bring along with it, and these are just some of those side effects. And you see, because of the good lower body that we had here, and we had, oops, that's not good, lower body that we had here and here at foot strike, we're going to see how this back shoulder then gets to rotate forward, and back shoulder gets to rotate forward real cleanly, sending our energy and our power forward, 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 throwing it with the body, with the body, with the body really well. Oops, I didn't mean to go too fast with that. So then we can also see with the four guys here as well how we kind of all need to work on this front leg getting firm and throwing over a firm front side. You see it's happening down here. Boom, boom, boom. But unfortunately, before it locks out, it has to swivel out. It's having to swivel out, then lock out. Swivel out, then lock out. If it was already swiveled out by foot strike, then it could just be locking out, and we'd have a really good operating front side leg. We can kind of see that knee starts to go forward. Once we hit, we get that lower body, that knee going forward. That's linear energy left over. So that means we could have used that linear energy and multiplied and amplified our rotational energy of that throw. But we got some of that left over. Same thing, we're trying to lock out that front leg, that knee, but first we got to swivel it to get it in the position it needs to be. And by that time that you get done swiveling it and you start to lock it out, that ball is already out of the hand. And we can see with that swivel of that knee so late, how then that foot even then, boom, swivels finally straight, finally straight, finally straight, finally straight, but way too late, unfortunately. See over here, you kind of think about that same thing. And we can see how it's not locking out, but it's not really giving way during our release. So that's a pretty good firm front side. If we could just keep locking it out and getting it even firmer, we would be able to continue our rotation through, as opposed to it kind of stopping our ability to do that and having to keep going then forward. If this front side could continue to get firm and lock out even more as it continues, we would then have a good flagpole to be able to continue to rotate around. But instead, that flagpole starts to break, and we have to then break with it. But that is just nitpicking at stuff to take us to the next level, to get us that extra power, that extra spin, that extra movement, that extra repeatability in our command. And then here are both that front and that side view synced up. So that way you guys can see what kind of it looks like from a 360, as best 360, I guess, viewpoint that we can get. Continuing again to pause at that front foot strike position so that way we kind of see what our lower body was able to do and then what that allows our upper body to do after. Because again, we want that lower body to rotate as much as we can before foot strike, making sure that our upper body does not rotate during that point, because we don't want to rotate our upper body until after that front foot gets into the ground, creating as much upper lower half or hip shoulder separation as possible. I look forward to getting to work with you guys over the next coming weeks and months. I'm going to have some cool toys for us to be able to use in the coming weeks to help us with some of this stuff. So I look forward to answering any questions we may have. So if you do have questions, let's make sure we come ready to ask them. That way we can be working with 100% clarity on what it is we're trying to do to get better, why we're trying to make these changes, and then learning what to do and how to work on fixing them. And then it's just putting in that work.